What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If Naruto had the Sharingan. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. What do you make of this Kakashi? The man sighed. I'm not sure, the only thing I could think of about Naruto that only you and a few people are supposed to know is his parentage. But that doesn't make sense. The Hokage and Kakashi had been going over the little note Naruto had left for him for a while now. It annoyed Kakashi to no end that he was the one tasked to figuring it all out when it was obvious in the Hokage's face that he knew what Naruto meant. Thinking he was being made fun of, Kakashi didn't stop to think that maybe asking him what he knew about it was the Hokage's way of finding out if there was a leak of information in his ranks that he had to take care of. That's because you're guessing wrong, Kakashi, said Hiruzen cryptically. The only time I can recall ever mentioning Ibiki to Naruto-kun is the night of the Mizuki incident. The Mizuki incident. By now it was common knowledge between Konoha's forces that the man had been found to be a traitor. None other than the people involved, however, were privy to the full details. It was revealed that Mizuki decided to impersonate Naruto in his heist. I, however, kept quiet about the fact that Naruto actually helped us track him after he attempted to flee the village. At the moment I had no knowledge of who Mizuki was working for or why he had chosen Naruto to impersonate. After Ibiki told me about Orochimaru's involvement, I decided to keep it secret, hoping he never got word of this, explained Hiruzen. Do you think Yakushi Kabuto is a spy? Asked Kakashi. I'm not certain. It is a possibility we should definitely look into. If he is a spy, we must discover for whom he's spying. That's not to say Hiruzen doesn't have a few guesses on the matter, but he thinks it best to wait until more information is available to him. Kakashi furrowed his brow in concentration. I believe it would be best if you send an Umbu squad to shadow him for a while. No, replied Hiruzen, not bothering to give the notion so much as a second thought. No? Asked Kakashi, a dumbfounded look on his face. If he truly is a spy, we must assume he's able to detect a tail of Umbu. I doubt our forces would be able to get close enough to him to make tailing him useful, said Hiruzen as he looked out the window. However, he trailed off. What makes Naruto special is not common knowledge. I'm inclined to believe he is not a target. It's true that Naruto was the one to detect the leak of information by means of his classified mission, but it just wouldn't make sense for this suspected spy to tip off his subject like that. That made him think it was most likely an accident. What truly is concerning for the Hokage is the why. Why would a suspected spy try and approach a group of random genin? They hold no valuable information he could get out of them. Was he trying to lure them into a false sense of security? Why? I want you to go into the forest, monitor the exams from the tower. If you find anything suspicious, I'm giving you free rein to act as you see fit. Is that clear? Crystal, replied Kakashi. Then report to Anko in the tower at once. It will be done. Kakashi left the Hokage's office via Shunshin. He wasn't sure why, but he was starting to get a bad feeling about all this. Gather round, kiddies, yelled out Anko, getting the attention of the genin. You all better pay attention, cause I'm not gonna tell you twice, alright? This is training ground 44, or like I like to call it, the Forest of Death. Everyone started looking a little hesitant after Anko's statement. Well, almost everyone. Naruto and Kiba were clearly not impressed by what they assumed to be the Proctor's scare tactics. The whiskered boy was lucky enough to have a level-headed teammate most of the time, and a good amount of concealing sessions on his back to stop him from saying something stupid. Kiba wasn't that lucky. Like we're going to be scared by you, crazy lady, proclaimed Kiba boldly. His teammates didn't even have time to scold him before the crazy lady decided to take action herself. Anko threw a kunao at Kiba so fast he didn't even have time to react. The kunao passed right by his face, leaving a little scar over the fang mark on his left cheek. That wasn't enough for her, however. she disappeared from their view, fast enough to make it look like she vanished only to emerge embracing Kiba by the back. A wicked smile adorned her face while she slowly licked the blood from Kiba's cheek. "You're a rude boy, aren't you? Rude boys tend to leave their blood all over the Anko suddenly stopped talking and quickly grabbed a kunai from her coat. She readied her weapon without losing her hold on Kiba and quickly turned her head around. "I was only giving you back your kunai," said the Kusa shinobi, who surprised Anko, still holding the blade on her sickly long tongue. Without letting her smile leave her face, Anko addressed the strange ninja. "Thank you, Kusa shinobi, I wouldn't ever get this close to me again unless you want to cut your days short." Despite her bravado, Anko was immediately weary of this girl. There was something unnerving about her. "I'm sorry, Anko-san, I didn't mean to hurt you, it's just that seeing the blood and the way you threw your blade made me feel excited," said the girl as she walked away. "That doesn't make sense," muttered Naruto. "What was that?" asked Sakura. "That girl's chakra, it's different. I remember her signature from the first test, it wasn't nearly as big and awful," explained Naruto quietly. Sakura wasn't sure what that meant, but she had learned to trust Naruto's sensing abilities. That was another person it was best to avoid. Unbeknownst to Naruto and Sakura, who weren't as quiet as they thought, Anko heard their conversation. A thoughtful look made its way to her face before she replaced it with her usual smirk and addressed the examines once again. "Everyone's in a bad mood today. It must be something in the air," she joked, effectively getting everyone's attention. Anko signaled some of the chunin in the vicinity and they started handing out slips of papers to every team. "What you're receiving now are consent forms you have to sign if you wish to participate in this part of the exams." "What exactly are we consenting to?" asked Sakura. "Oh. You know, death and stuff like that." Anko was sporting a mischievous smile on her face. She is a big fan of theatrics. "From this point forward corpses start emerging, you know. If you don't sign your forms it would be my and Kanaha's responsibility. We can't have that now, can we?" For some reason, Anko laughing after she said that made Naruto feel nervous. What was it with the jounin in this village? "Now I shall explain," said Anko in a dignified manner. "This will be a survival exercise." Anko started looking through her coat and got out a map. "First let me tell you about the terrain. There's exactly 44 gates around the fenced ground. Inside the fence there's a forest, of course, a river, and a tower. Each gate is exactly 10 kilometers away from the tower. Once inside the forest, everything goes." The implications of what Anko just said weren't lost on any of the participants. Permission to kill. Each team will receive either an earth or a heaven scroll. To pass you need to get to the tower carrying both scrolls. Your whole team needs to be there. If you're missing a member or one of the members is incapable of continuing, you're out. Do I make myself clear?" asked Anko, receiving yells of yes all around the clearing. "So she expects half of us to fail here. Troublesome woman. I almost forgot, there's a time limit for this exam. You have exactly 120 hours to get to the tower once inside the forest, 5 days if you don't feel like doing your math." Naruto sighed. "A time limit? What are we going to do about the food?" asked a chubby genin. Anko smirked. "There's different flora and fauna all around this forest you can hunt to feed yourselves, just make sure you don't turn into the hunted. You will now be given a scroll randomly in exchange of your signed consent forms. Under no circumstance are you allowed to see through the contents of your scrolls. As chunin you will be expected to handle vital information, make sure to prove you're reliable." Everyone started gathering around the tent set in front of the fences. After each team had received their respective scrolls they were directed to a different gate each and were now just waiting for them to open. Naruto and Sakura had gotten an earth scroll after explaining to the chunin in charge of handing them over that they were registered in the exams as a two-man cell and were now waiting on their own gate. The members of Team 7 were constantly stealing glances at the other for the better part of 15 minutes while they waited for this test to begin. It was hard not to. They both liked each other after all. Naruto had never really fallen out of love with his teammate, he just accepted it as something that can't be and moved on. He was a rather persistent person, but even he knew when to give up. Sakura was complicated. She liked Naruto, heck, she might even be in love with Naruto, but she felt wrong about it. After rejecting his advances for so long, what right did she have to feel for his teammate? Especially after how she treated him in the past. She was truly blind. Sakura had moved past Sasuke's death, but she wasn't sure that she moved on from Sasuke as a person. It was like Naruto had been slowly taking his place in her heart, growing on her at the same time Sasuke became just a fond memory. Was that all Naruto truly was? A replacement? The whiskered blonde has a way with Sakura that she couldn't quite understand. He makes her feel safe. Naruto has a way of just naturally caring and looking after her that made her feel appreciated. She felt valid. And that wasn't fair to him. Sakura knew Naruto still loved her and she knew there was a chance that she loved him back, but she is also sure Naruto deserves better. So much better. We're ready to begin, yelled a random Chunin, snapping Sakura out of her thoughts. The gates all opened and both Naruto and Sakura looked at each other with a face completely serious. It was time. They rushed in and ran for 10 minutes straight. After deciding they'd be better off moving through the trees, they climbed the tree closest to them and stopped for a moment to plan their strategy. Weird, said Naruto. What's weird? Asked Sakura. The forest, it's full of chakra. I won't be able to scout ahead for teams. Don't worry though, I can still feel people approaching. It just means we'll have to track the enemy old school, said Naruto with a smile. Full of chakra? I heard that this whole forest was grown by the shot aim. The chakra you feel might be coming from the trees, lectured Sakura, earning a wow face from Naruto. After some discussion they both decided it was best to stick to the trees while Naruto used Kage Bunshin to create decoys of them that would stick to the ground. Everything had been going smoothly until three shadows started tailing Naruto and Sakura, waiting for a perfect opportunity to hit. Sakura-chan, I need to pee, said Naruto with a sheepish smile. Sakura looked at him irritated. Fine. Be quick, we need to get to a team fast. Naruto went into the woods and left Sakura by herself looking around the clearing where they stopped. She might as well take the time to gather some supplies while she waits for Naruto to be over. She walked to a nearby bush to gather some edible berries when out of the ground emerged a tall aim shinobi dressed in a full beige bodysuit. He quickly placed a kunai on Sakura's throat and held her from the back to make sure she couldn't move. Give me your scroll and I might just let you live, said the genin with a cocky smirk behind his breather. Sakura started trembling in his hold and the aim shinobi couldn't hide his joy. Are you scared, little girl? Feeling confident he got even closer to Sakura only to realize there was no fear on her face, but a smirk of her own. Gotcha, she said before bursting into a cloud of smoke. What the dash, Shanero? From the trees dropped Sakura fist first into the aim shinobi, who managed to jump back in time to avoid the hit. Sakura landed on the floor leaving a small crater and stood up to face her opponent. She got a kunai out of her pouch and rushed at him, taking the initiative. She swinged at him relentlessly while he did his best to dodge the continuous strikes as he walked back. He bumped into a tree and realized he had been set up when a hand grabbed his feet from the ground. Doton, Shinju-Yozanshu no Jutsu. He sank into the ground and the Sakura that had been swinging at him dissipated, revealing he had been under the influence of her genjutsu. The real one emerged from the ground and sported a cocky smirk of her own. She was about to address his buried opponent, but the sound of someone charging her from behind interrupted her. She turned around with the kunao in hand only for one of Naruto's electrified staffs to come flying at him from the trees and hitting him on the back of the neck, making him drop unconscious with a loud thud that made his buried teammate wince. Naruto then walked out of the trees carrying the remaining member of the AIM team on his shoulder, completely out cold. He dropped him near Sakura's captive opponent and extended his arm. Futon, Hanpatsukaze no Jutsu. A small gust of wind picked up his fallen staff and brought it back to him. He put it on his back and turned to address his teammate, who was looking at him with a twitching eye. You wanted to look cool, didn't you? Naruto gave her a sheepish smile and rubbed his nose. Yeah. Kakashi said it looked cooler when I managed to do it without calling out the jutsu. Sakura decided to ignore the comment and returned her attention to the genin neck deep in the ground. Who carries your scroll? She asked, looking at him with the scariest look she could muster. I'm not going to tell you anything, you bitch, was the kind response of her captive. Sakura looked at him and a devious smirk formed in her face. She formed a rat seal and called out a jutsu he couldn't quite understand. Magen, Narukami no Jutsu. All around the AIM shinobi the clearing started going dark. He somehow managed to free his hands enough to perform a jutsu that allowed him to re-emerge from the ground. After he did, the clearing was visible once again and Team 7 was nowhere to be seen. He walked over to his fallen teammates, laying face first on the floor. He kneeled next to them, set on waking them up, only to find them both with a kunao on their foreheads. He was shocked and started walking back without taking his eyes off of them. Suddenly, a strong presence stopped him from moving forward. He turned around to find his previously pretty captor turned into a monster. The girl was now a head taller than him. Her hair was swaying on her back and blood was dripping from her black eyes and mouth. She then gave him the sickest smile he had ever seen, showing off her incredibly large fangs covered in blood, and put her burning hand on his neck. The scroll, she growled. The beige-clad genin started sweating and trembling in fear, the rational part of his mind screaming at him to snap out of it, completely overwhelmed by the immense fear he felt. He swiftly reached for his scroll and slowly gave it to his captor, making her smile. His surroundings started changing again and he could see his teammates still knocked out but safe on the ground. The girl in front of him reverted back to normal and winked at the same time. A strong chop on his neck sent him to the land of unconsciousness. Sakura looked at the earth scroll she just got and sighed. Not the one we need, she said as she pocketed the scroll on her pouch, thinking it might come in handy later. Naruto walked towards her and said that wasn't really necessary, you know. Sakura smirked at him. I wanted to look cool too. Weak. You already took their scroll, Niji, no need to trash talk them even more, said Tenten, making the Hyuga scoff. Team 9 had found Asuna team a few hours after entering the forest thanks to the Hyuga's all-seeing eye and decided to ambush them. Beating them had been fairly easy. Lee and Tenten didn't do much other than watch as their teammate trashed their opposition around the clearing. It almost made Lee and Tenten feel sorry for them. Lee hated how Niji treated everyone he deemed inferior, especially because that's how Niji treated him. Lee was born with a special condition making him incapable of performing ninjutsu or genjutsu. He was considered a failure who only had mediocre taijutsu to rely on. It all changed when Mato Guy discovered him training alone one day after team assignments and gave him the advice that would set his life on the right path. Youthfulness. Lee dropped to the ground sweating and crying after failing to meet his own expectations. Again. All that hard work doesn't mean anything, called out a voice that Lee recognized as his sensei. You believe that too? Am I not working hard enough? Will I never be good because I wasn't born a natural genius like Niji? The boy cried. All that hard work doesn't mean anything. If you don't believe in yourself first, finished Guy. Lee's trembling form looked up from the ground to meet his sensei's eye. Can I really do it, Guy-sensei? He asked between sobs. Guy gave the boy a warm smile and dropped his boisterous attitude for a moment. I believe you can do it, Yes. Lee looked surprised to finally have someone actually believe in him for the first time in his life. Do you know why I think that, Lee? The boy shook his head. It's because you have a gift not even Niji has, said Guy, surprisingly. Not even Niji? He asked. That's right, said Guy. You have a gift not even Niji Spyakugan can beat. Perseverance. Perseverance. Few people have the will to fight against adversity, Lee. You fight to reach your dream even against the destiny you were imposed on at birth. His sensei's words rang deep in Lee's head as some form of realization settled in. You persevere every day, that makes you a true genius. A genius of hard work. Hard work can overcome any obstacle, Niji, even you. Niji turned to look at his teammate only to find him not really looking at him but the horizon. That annoyed him even more for some reason. Hard work means nothing, it was their fate to meet their match in me, declared Niji, again with full certainty. Normally Lee is all up for standing up to Niji and his belief in fate, he just can't convince him that no one's fate is sealed in stone no matter how hard he tries. He decided to skip the argument this time, better not to argue with your team in the middle of an exam. Let's just go, interrupted Tenten before the argument escalated. Tenten was always in the middle of her teammates' arguments and she was always torn. If you asked her before she would have told you that Lee spoke nonsense, but she had witnessed Lee's growth, she knew he was the fastest genin in the village if not one of the fastest period. His taijutsu was excellent, beat only by their sensei's own, she knew Lee was right but she didn't want to be on Niji's bad side. She fails to notice everyone is on Niji's bad side. After another argument about the team's difference in beliefs, Team 9 started making their way to the tower. They came up with a system to stay out of danger as much as possible. Niji would periodically turn his Byakugan on and off to scout their surroundings without tiring the Hyuga too much if a battle were to take place. He never let his all-seeing eye rest for more than a minute, there was no way someone would be fast enough to avoid detection. Right? A figure rushed them at full speed between one of the Hyuga's resting intervals without them even feeling it. When Niji activated his Byakugan he saw the figure of a girl finishing a set of hand seals. He didn't even have the time to warn his teammates. A gigantic gush of wind powerful enough to tore a few trees from the air came at them and hit full force. Lee was sent flying for miles while both of his teammates were slammed against the trees. Tenten was the first person to react. She stood up and found a girl she identified as a Kusa shinobi walking towards them. Tenten was no fool and knew from the first time she set her eyes on their attacker that this was no ordinary shinobi. What scroll do you need? She asked, looking for a peaceful resolution to the conflict she knew she had no way of winning. The Kusa shinobi seemed amused by the girl's question. What scroll do I need? What about both? Tenten didn't even have time to be confused about the cryptic response due to the Kusa girl running to her so fast she didn't even have to blink, and buried a fist on her stomach. She dropped to her knees with the air completely blown out of her. She started coughing blood, desperately trying to catch a breath. The Kusanin smirked and licked the blood she had spit on her arm. Hakakasho. Niji jumped right in front of her and sent a strong gust of condensed wind from his extended palm that sent the Kusa shinobi flying and crashing in a tree. Not even looking like she had even felt the impact, she stood up like nothing happened and gave Niji a sick smile. Why don't we make this more interesting? She asked playfully, licking her lips and giving Niji a stare that was succeeding in making uncomfortable. On her hands were both of the scrolls their team had gotten. She used a small katon jutsu to burn the earth scroll much to the shock of Tenten and opened her mouth wide open. Her immensely large tongue swirled around the scroll and pushed it down her throat. Only one way to get it now. It was possible for them to see how the scroll was swallowed as it made its way down to her stomach. Not really minding the disgusting display of abilities, A confident smirk graced Niji's features. You made a mistake coming here without your teammates. The Hyuga boy got in his Jaiken stance and rushed his opponent. He started placing fast-paced hits on her body, all intending on shutting her Tenketsu down. After he was done, Niji took a step back only to watch his enemy turn into mud. Ack! A kick from his left side sent Niji crashing towards a tree. A sickening crunch was heard with the impact and Niji was certain it hadn't been the tree. Kukyaku! A dark and sickening chuckle filled Niji's ears. He looked at the perpetrator and started seething at how easy it had been to manhandle him. I was told you were some kind of prodigy. I must confess, you're quite disappointing. Fake hurt was clear in her voice and it only showed how incredibly amusing this whole situation is for her. Niji started gritting his teeth in anger at being toyed with by this no-name shinobi. He stood up and rushed at her recklessly with quick Jaiken jabs once again, but much to Niji's surprise, she dodged them all in a show of pure speed he only knew his sensei capable of. The Kusa shinobi got past Niji's defense and immobilized him with a well-placed kick in the gut. If she hadn't been interrupted, she would have ended the job right there and there. Sogu, Baku Ryasei. A Kusarigama came out of one of Tenten's many scrolls and tied around the Kusa shinobi's body. She tightened the hold of the chain and out of the same scroll she started unsealing and throwing a barrage of weapons in a set of moves so gracious it looked like she was dancing. The Kusa shinobi was hit by multiple projectiles and dropped to the ground bleeding profusely. Tenten dropped to the ground tired and sighed in relief. She was about to make her way to her teammate when a maniacal laugh invaded the forest. Niji and Tenten looked stunned as out of the body's mouth a pale white man emerged. He looked at them and gave them a vicious smile that froze them both in place. To think I would be forced out by mere genin, spat the man. Who are you? Tenten had been right to suspect landing that attack was a bit too easy. The fear in her voice was clear and no matter how much she tried to hide her emotions everyone could see how terrified she was. Only one thing is clear for her, this man is no genin. Oh! How rude of me! Said the man in mock surprise. It seems I failed to introduce myself. My name is Orochimaru. Oh, Orochimaru of the Sannin. She asked only to receive a smirk as an answer. Oh my! And here I thought Sarutobi-sensei didn't like people talking about me anymore. Finding the situation amusing, he brought his hand to his forehead and adopted a dramatic pose. I'm surprised someone so young knows about me. Tenten knew everything about the Sannin, at least everything that could be found in history books. She dreams of one day becoming a legendary kunoichi like Senjutsu Nade after all. Before any of them had the time to run or do anything, Orochimaru released a sickening aura that completely shocked the genin to their core. Images of their death started filling their minds and Tenten couldn't stop herself from vomiting her guts out. The fallen Sannin took it as an opportunity to make a move on his precious target but was interrupted once again. Dynamic entry. Out of the blue came their green-clad teammate and with an incredibly strong kick sent Orochimaru flying away from his prey. Lee. Moments earlier, a tree in the middle of a clearing stopped Lee's advance. The green-clad genin hit the bark of the tree hard with a sickening crunch of his back. He dropped limp to the ground and laid there for a few minutes until he gathered enough strength to stand up once again and make his way to his teammates as fast as he could. He was just starting to walk when a giant snake came rushing at him. He managed to sidestep it and send it crashing towards the tree he had hit before and tried to run away from it, but the snake recovered quickly, way too quickly. It rushed at him once again and this time managed to swallow him in one bite. Lee started struggling inside the body of the snake. He could feel it moving and slowly working on digesting him. Not seeing any other option, he brought both arms together and started molding the little chakra in his body. First gate of opening, Kaimon. The restraint his brain puts on his muscles stopped. Second gate of healing, Kyuman. The strength of his body increased. Third gate of life, Siaman. The skin of Lee turned red from the increased flow of blood on his body. 4 Gate of Pain, Showman. An explosion of green chakra surrounded Lee. From the inside of the snake's stomach, Lee used his empowered state to perform one of his taijutsu techniques to rip open his flesh prison. Konoha Senpyu. The spinning kick ruptured the snake's stomach, causing an explosion of blood and flesh. Out of it came Lee at full speed with complete disregard of the gory scene he left behind. Present time. Orochimaru stood up looking annoyed. He didn't have much time to think about it. The same kid that was supposed to be eaten alive by his summon came flying at him at high speeds. Hachiman, thought the Sunin as he stood up once again. Lee started a powerful taijutsu bout with the wayward Sunin. He threw a hard fist to the older man's head only for him to duck under it and try to punish the powerful genin's stomach. Being fast enough to react, Lee grabbed the man's hand and placed a strong knee on his stomach that had him spitting blood. He then backed off a little and placed a powerful spinning kick in the back of his head that sent him flying. Lee ran with an extended fist set on knocking him out, but much to his surprise, the Sunin sidestepped it and grabbed Lee by the neck painfully, stopping his momentum completely in a single move. "You annoying little pest," he said, as he placed knee strike after knee strike on the boy's stomach, enjoying the sickening sound of flesh being ruptured with each hit. Orochimaru was aware that Lee wasn't using ninjutsu, but while the Hachiman formation didn't need the use of chakra to be activated, it was a chakra-based technique, and that meant it could be shut down. Orochimaru extended his arm backwards and each of his fingers started glowing in a sickly purple. He used his tongue to rip open Lee's jumpsuit and exposed his bare skin. Gajyo Fun. Orochimaru struck Lee's stomach hard and placed the seal on him. The gates closed and Lee was rendered useless and unconscious. The Sunin placed a knee on his face hard for good measure and let him fall from the tall tree to his certain death. The knocked out genin was falling at high speeds but was stopped by Tenten, who tied a kunai with ninja wire and threw it at him, managing to tie Lee around the bark of a tree. Orochimaru jumped to the tree she and Niji were standing in and slapped her face like she was nothing as he walked towards Niji and licked his lips while looking sickly at him. "What do you want?" asked Niji through gritted teeth, not enjoying the fact that he and his team had been beaten the way they had. "Isn't it obvious?" Orochimaru chuckled. "I want you." Niji jumped back just in time to avoid Orochimaru stepping on him. He got in his Jaiken stance once again and smirked confidently at him. "You're within my range of divination. Haka Sanjuni Sho." 2 palms. He hit 2 of the Sunin's tenketsu on his arms, much to his surprise. 4 palms. He yelled as he hit some of the tenketsu on his stomach and made the Sunin cough a little blood on him. 8 palms. He managed to seal some of the tenketsu in both of his arms to stop him from using any jutsu. 16 palms. Niji struck most of the remaining tenketsu on Orochimaru's stomach. 32 palms. The Hyuga prodigy completely shut the tenketsu on the man's chest, effectively stopping his heart, ending with an open palm that sent the man flying. The limp body of Orochimaru hit a tree and fell on its branch, but, to the complete and utter shock of the stoic boy, the Sunin dissolved into a puddle of mud again and re-emerged from the branch of the tree they were both standing in. Orochimaru made eye contact with Niji and used the Kanashibari no Jutsu on him without having to even use hand signs. "You did good, Niji-kun, you definitely live up to expectations," he said. Orochimaru made a modified ram seal and his neck extended towards Niji. He opened his mouth and bit on the boy's neck. A black mark in the form of 3 tomo appeared on Niji's shoulder as he dropped to the ground screaming in pure agony before passing out. "What did you do to him?" asked Tenten in worry. "I gave him a gift," said the Sunin, turning to look at Tenten. He opened his mouth and out came the heaven scroll he swallowed before. "Make sure to pass, it'll be a shame to have my gift go to waste." The treacherous Sunin walked towards the bark of the tree and quite literally merged into it, leaving a worried and tired Tenten with 2 unconscious teammates. Soon Niji-kun, You will come to me begging for power and I'll be happy to comply. I have to admit. Anko smirked. This is way more fun than I thought it would be. Fun? Asked Kakashi. You know, continued Anko. The joy of tormenting young souls and scaring children to death. You're peculiar, Anko, said Kakashi with a chuckle. You're no fun, Kakashi-kun, said Anko, lodging on Kakashi's shoulder and giving him a seductive wink. Kakashi had joined Anko in the tower as per the Hokage's orders. He had been there for a while now and as of yet nothing much had happened. Only one team had made it to the tower in record time, and Kakashi had the pleasure of watching the performance of that red-haired boy in the Suna team. He made it a point to talk with his students about him when they reached the tower. The tower was equipped with a surveillance set that allowed the exam's proctor, and in this case Kakashi, to watch the exams from an advantageous point of view through the use of cameras. The genin he was sent here to investigate hadn't done anything that would raise suspicions yet, and that had Kakashi thinking hard. Was he just a normal genin? Did he just casually hear about Naruto's mission record from someone? Had Naruto misheard what he said? Anko. Kakashi-senpai. The voice of a frantic genin rushing through the doors of the room to get to them shook Kakashi out of his thoughts. What is it? Anko asked. We found something in the outskirts of the forest, you need to see it for yourselves. Kakashi and Anko nodded to each other and left with the genin, each of them leaving a cage bunshin in their place to keep on monitoring the test. The group of shinobi ran through the forest the fastest they could and reached the gates in half an hour. What they found when they got to their destination wasn't what they were expecting at all. Being guarded by a squad of umbu and a pair of genin was the lifeless body of the Kusa shinobi Anko had met at the start of the exams. What immediately caught their attention was the face of the girl, or rather, the lack of it. Orochimaru, snarled Anko, getting everyone's attention. I would recognize that bastard's handiwork anywhere. It's him, he's here. She continued. The squad of umbu sealed behind the body and turned to look at the highest-ranking shinobi among them for instructions. Tora, called Kakashi, getting the attention of a brown-haired man with a lion mask on his face. Report this to Hokage-sama immediately. Kakashi. She interrupted. We have to go in. Anko wasn't thinking clearly, and he was very aware of it. He, however, knew the presence of the Sunin presented a great risk to every genin team there, and he couldn't just let him roam free around them while he waited for the Hokage. Especially not his team. Kakashi nodded and instructed the remains of the umbu squad to go in with them. They were just making their way through the forest again when the cage bunshin they left behind both dispelled to inform them of what they had seen through the screens. Orochimaru playing with Niji and his team. We have to go now, yelled Anko, fastening her pace. When they got to the spot where the battle took place, everyone was long gone. Anko managed to pick up a trail and they pursued for a while longer. After what felt like hours, their pursuit brought fruits and they were now face to face with the Snake Sunin himself. Anko was about to jump in and get rid of that condescending smirk of his, but Kakashi stopped her. What are you doing here? Asked Kakashi with a commanding voice. Orochimaru brushed off Kakashi's tone and chuckled at him. My Kakashi-kun, you're going to make me think you're not happy to see me. Just tell us what you want, you bastard. What did you want with that team? Demanded Anko. Orochimaru slumped his shoulders in fake defeat and replied. And here I thought holding back on them would allow me to go unnoticed. The squad of umbu all surrounded Orochimaru and got ready to attack him just like Kakashi and Anko. The copycat revealed his Sharingan eye and carefully studied Orochimaru. The man smirked at them and made a half-ram seal. The curse mark on Anko reacted and she dropped to the ground, thrashing around and screaming in agony. Konoha shinobi have become so rude ever since I left, joked Orochimaru. Let me go quietly and I might let little Anko-chan live. To the untrained eye it might seem like Orochimaru was scared of Kakashi. He wasn't. he could take down everyone present at the same time if it came to it, and they all knew it. What Orochimaru wanted to avoid was his own former sensei, who the Sunin knew was most likely already informed of his presence. Kakashi had trained his ass off the past few months ever since returning from his mission in Nami. He knows he has what it takes to give the Sunin a decent fight, but he was sure it wouldn't be enough to beat him. He relented and stood down, allowing the traitor to vanish once again. After the Sunin left, Anko stopped screaming and fell unconscious. "I'm taking her back to the tower, someone tell the Hokage to meet me in the infirmary," said Kakashi as he vanished in a swirl of leaves carrying the purple-haired woman in his arms. "Is that boy truly worth the trouble, Orochimaru-sama?" "I don't like being questioned, Kabuto," replied the man menacingly. "I didn't mean to question your judgment, Orochimaru-sama, I'm merely curious," replied the teen without a hint of fear in his voice. The Snake Sunin chuckled at his lack of respect and addressed his protege Kago no Tori no Juin, the caged bird seal. "It truly is a magnificent creation." Kabuto looked at him with questioning eyes, asking him to elaborate further. "Working around a caged bird seal is hard, but not impossible. I could get a main house member without much trouble, but this boy is not only a prodigy. He's full of hatred I can use," said the Sunin. "Aren't you worried that the Hyuga might use the seal to get rid of him before you can take him?" Kabuto's question was beyond amusing to the Sunin, if his loud laughter was anything to go by. "You think my foolish sensei would allow the Hyuga to kill a child of the leaf?" "I thought the Hokage didn't have the power to get involved in clan affairs," commented Kabuto. "He doesn't. But, my involvement in this is a matter of village security. He can and will overrule them without thinking twice about it to save the child. The Hokage is the maximum authority in the village. The clans only had such liberties because the Shodaime allowed them to when he founded the village. No clan was dumb enough to go against the Hokage these days anyway. Not anymore." "It truly is a shame," said the Sunin, snapping out of his own thoughts. "Imagine what I could have done with Sasuke-kun Chapter 8. Status report, now. The Hokage made his way through the infirmary where Kakashi had asked to be met with a troubled look on his face. "It's not every day that your wayward student decides to pay a visit. We made contact with Orochimaru in the forest, he really is here," said Kakashi grimly. The Hokage sighed. "Do we know what he's doing here?" "We're not sure yet. He attacked Hyuga Niji's team and left both boys completely out cold. We're still monitoring them through the screens," informed Kakashi, earning a thoughtful look from the Hokage. "This has become too serious, Umbu." The same brown-haired man with the lion mask from before showed up. "Gather a squad and go into the forest, retrieve every team still competing and get them out of there. The exams are cancelled. No," yelled out a recently awakened Anko. "No?" asked the Hokage. "If we cancel the exams, he's going to attack the village," said Anko, surprising the Jounin and the Hokage. "How do you know that, Anko?" Kakashi certainly didn't remember Orochimaru telling them he would do such a thing when they faced him off. "She." Anko motioned to a little snake coming out of her trench coat, "told me." Anko was allowed to sign the snake summoning contract back when she was still Orochimaru's apprentice. After his deflection and her return to the village, he tried to get her off, but much to his chagrin, the leader of the snake clan, Manda, view Orochimaru as nothing more than a pest he did favors to from time to time and as such wouldn't honor his wishes. The summoning clan later became divided between those who came to realize Orochimaru was a sick bastard and those who didn't care as long as they got a free meal out of helping him. The former were the ones Anko frequently summoned. Both groups were still a part of the same clan and as such, could be summoned by either if they so choose, hence why Orochimaru had been able to send Anko a message. "If he's willing to attack us just to make sure we keep this going, there must be a reason why he's doing this. mused the Hokage before something clicked on his mind. It's the Hyuga boy, that's what he's after. He looked at Kakashi. Did you see what he did to him? Kakashi shook his head. We were out of the tower looking at the corpse the Chunin found. We left a pair of cage bunshin to keep watching in our absence, but they released themselves the moment they saw him in the surveillance system as instructed. Did you find anything? He asked, rubbing his chin in thought. When we got there both him and Team 9 were long gone. We located the team. Should we send a squad to retrieve them? Hiruzen thought about it for a moment and slumped his shoulders. I would like to get them out as soon as possible. But it's best if we let them stay in the forest and complete the exams. Why would we do that, Hokage-sama? Asked Kakashi. He's interested in Neji, that makes Neji the key to lure him out. Hiruzen looked sternly at Anko and she immediately knew what that look meant. Do you think he did that to him? Anko's voice was full of something akin to sadness and frustration when she asked that question. She received a sad nod from the Hokage as an answer. He knows what he did is dangerous. If he truly believes what he's doing is worth the risk, then we must find out what it is. Kakashi wasn't too thrilled about this. He knew the Hokage was right, but he still didn't like it. Growing as close to his team as he had, it was hard for him to sacrifice another for the sake of the village. The Hokage seemed to have caught Kakashi's train of thought, if the comforting hand on his shoulder was any indication. Tora, I want a squad ready for an emergency extraction. You will stay here and watch over the team. If at any point Orochimaru decides to approach them again, and only if he does, you will intervene. The Sandaime wanted to keep the team safe from his wayward student, but he couldn't show any form of favoritism, especially not with foreign shinobi in the forest. If another participating team made a move on them, it was up to Team 9 to keep themselves safe. Please wake up. Either of you, please just wake up. It was hard for Tenten not to shed a few tears when looking at her team's dire condition. Desperation was visible in her face, mixed with the frustration she was feeling because there was nothing she could do to help. It was even harder for her to even start to process just how they managed to get into this situation. Team 9 had started this exam with no doubt in their minds that they were going to ace them and come out as Chunin. She started thinking they might have been wrong. After being toyed by Orochimaru of the Sunin, Tenten managed to carry both of her teammates to the safest cave she could find in her vicinity. She found one a few kilometers away from the place where they encountered the traitorous ninja. She wasn't sure exactly how far though. She knew it was important to keep track of her steps as a ninja, but limping your way through a forest full of threats while carrying the unconscious weight of both of your teammates had a way of making you a little distracted. The team was now resting in what Tenten thought to be a safe place. The cave they were in was protected by layer after layer of traps made out of the girl's own supplies and what she could find in her vicinity. She wanted to use her weapons for them so badly, but she had already wasted enough as it is. Best not waste any more here. What were the chances that someone would be able to find them there anyway? Tenten took a look at the scroll she was holding in her hand and sighed. The Chunin exams were now the least of her worries. If it were up to her, she would have quit the test and made sure her team was all right. Sadly for her, quitting was not an option. Arg. At first Tenten would immediately jump to her teammate and secret crush's aid when she heard him complaining. It took her a long time to realize she couldn't do anything to help him. What troubled her the most was not knowing what was going on with her team. Neji had been bitten by the Sunin and knocked unconscious shortly after. A seal had appeared right where his neck met his shoulders, and Tenten didn't know what it meant. She had a decent grasp of Fuinjutsu, higher than the average genin, because of her fighting style. That mark, however, completely baffled her. He had been suffering from an intense fever ever since he fell unconscious, and it was still burning hot in his body. To top that, the Hyuga prodigy would start trembling, groaning in pain from time to time, and the seal would give weird pulses. She didn't know what it meant, she didn't know why it was happening, but she knew it couldn't be good. Her other teammate wasn't faring any better and Tenten knew even less of what was going on with Lee, never had he been unconscious for so long. She didn't know what Orochimaru did to him, but it had to be incredibly powerful if he managed to close the gates with a single move. A noise coming from outside of the cave alerted Tenten. She held a kunao in each hand in a reversed grip and she walked silently towards the exit to find a squirrel looking a bit lost. Thinking she was overreacting, Tenten calmed down and was just about to walk back to her teammates when a hissing sound caught her attention. Quickly realizing what it was, she spun around to see an exploding tag just activated in the small body of the squirrel. Without a second thought, Tenten threw one of her kunao with perfect accuracy at the animal, making sure it exploded as far away from her and her teammates as possible. Boom! A bigger explosion than she anticipated engulfed the clearing and a big cloud of dust rose from the ground. Fetching another kunao from her pouch, she walked to the cave's entrance and started looking around for her attacker. The dust settled and it revealed the genin team from the sound, Kinyuta Dosu, Tsukakin, and Abumizaku. "We're here for the Hyaga," said the heavily bandaged one. "Give him to us and we'll let you live." "What do you want with Niji?" Tenten could guess what they wanted, but she needed to buy enough time to come up with something to defend herself. "That is none of your concern, little girl," Tenten growled. "If you want Niji, you'll have to get through me." The sound team started laughing at her and that only made her even more mad. One thing was to try and take her teammate from her, but Tenten hated to be underestimated. "If you have a death wish, then so be it." The spokesman of the team, who Tenten assumed to be their leader, rushed at her. Being that exactly what she wanted, she threw a kunao at him that seemingly missed his target. He smirked behind his bandages, but just before he could mock her, the kunao hit a tree trunk that had a thin ninja wire tied around it. A thick trunk with short pointed rocks tied around it came flying at him. Failing to react fast enough to dodge the hit, he was stabbed in multiple places and sent flying until he crashed with a tree and dropped to the ground in a loud thud. "Dosu!" yelled the other male of the team. If not familiar with them, you might think he was concerned for his teammate. The truth is, he was annoyed because he would have to do more work himself. Charging fast at Tenten in hopes of catching her off guard, Zaku started charging a big amount of energy on both arms. On closer inspection, Tenten could see holes. Not really wanting to find out why he had holes in his palms, Tenten threw a kunao at the ground, triggering another one of her traps. In the most undignified way possible, Zaku tripped over a hidden rope that tied tightly around his left foot. He was suddenly picked up by it and thrown towards the tree it was tied to. He hit his head hard, making another one of her attackers drop unconscious. With the use of her clever traps, Tenten started feeling really confident. She didn't have any more traps set, but she didn't doubt she could take on the girl of the team without much trouble. With a smirk of her own, Kin threw a hail of senbon needles at Tenten that she dodged by going down. Not one to waste an opportunity, Tenten charged at her, only to drop to the ground when the sound of a bell ringing invaded her ear. Unable to stand up, all she could do was watch as Kin calmly walked towards her. "That is as far as you go." With a chuckle, Kin stopped right in front of the struggling Tenten and kicked her stomach as hard as she physically could and stopped to look at the pain visible in her face, only to start again. The onslaught of kicks continued and Tenten could do absolutely nothing to stop it. The devious girl would only give her enough time to cough blood and catch some wind before continuing punishing her. Growing tired of only kicking the girl's stomach, Kin started viciously stomping her head with as much force as she could, making a dent in the ground the shape of Tenten's face. Growing bored of her own torture methods, Kin grabbed her arm and bent her elbow backwards, effectively breaking it and making Tenten scream in agony as she bled all over from her multiple bruises. Just to top it all off, she stabbed a kunao in each of her thighs. Kin kicked her hard on the head one more time, and what little consciousness was still with Tenten started leaving her. Waking up extremely annoyed, Dosu grabbed a kunao and started making his way towards the barely conscious Tenten, set on ending her life for daring to hurt him. Nakuden Sensha. A giant human boulder came spinning full force at Tenten's attacker. It caught both Kin and Dosu completely off guard, but, while Kin managed to jump back in time to avoid the impact, Dosu was hit and crushed so hard by it that he stuck to it and kept rolling with the ball until it finally came to a stop. Ino landed beside Tenten and started checking her for injuries. She wasn't familiar with her, she in fact had only met her once before, but Ino was in no way going to allow a fellow leaf kunoichi to be abused that way. In her time with Sakura, ever since their old friendship resurfaced, the pink-haired girl shared with Ino the little medical knowledge she had gotten from the scrolls she was provided, as well as the books Sakura got from the library. Sadly, neither she or Sakura were at a level where they could treat extensive injuries. In Tenten's case, multiple concussions most definitely, stab wounds and what she assumed to be severe lacerations in her stomach, as well as a broken arm. Ino's teammates dropped beside her while she got to work on stopping the bleeding and at least making sure Tenten's pain was bearable. "Shika, she's really hurt." Ino was frantic. She didn't know exactly what it was she wanted her teammate to accomplish, but he's supposed to be really smart and she's counting on that. "We don't have a way to treat her. Our best shot is to fend these guys off and take her to the tower with us." Shikamaru was analyzing the situation as calmly as he could. She knew Sakura's medical training and by extension Ino's wasn't good enough to treat more than not-so-threatening injuries. He didn't doubt Ino could heal most of the damage done to the girl's stomach, but he wasn't so sure about the head. "You fucking tree huggers." Kin became incredibly angry and snarled at them as she got out a full hail of senbon with her special bells tied. Not having been present long enough to be sure of how her jutsu worked or what it was that her jutsu did, Shikamaru decided it was best to interrupt her before she did anything at all. He started going through the hand seals for his own jutsu, but his pissed teammate beat him to it. Shinten Shin no Jutsu. Still on the ground with Tenten, Ino's body dropped seemingly void of life, while in Kin's body the Yamanake girl's conscience took control. Dosu came back to stand next to his teammate, being as angry as she was, and started channeling chakra into his arms modifications to use against them. Ino took advantage of his distraction, and from Kin's body she stabbed a kunao in her leg and a senbon needle in the back of his neck, making him drop unconscious. Zankyuha. From the air vents installed on his arms, Zaku channeled chakra and formed a gust of wind strong enough to destroy rocks and aimed it at the possessed Kin. He hit his target and sent her flying, causing multiple cuts in her body in the process. Ino got back into her body but was hurt by Zaku's attack because of her telepathic link with Kin's body. "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you all." Blinded by rage, Zaku started charging an incredible amount of chakra in both of his arms, set on destroying the group of genin gathered in front of him. Zankyakukuha. An overloaded version of the jutsu he used before, capable of leveling the ground as it went, started advancing towards them at high speeds. Out of nowhere, Naruto appeared and jumped in front of the attack, already going through a set of hand seals. Futon, Bauski Tate no Kaze. All around them the wind started spinning in a circular motion, effectively creating a shield. Naruto loaded as much chakra as he could into. Both jutsu collided in an explosion of wind that rose a big cloud of dust. When it cleared, it revealed an angry Naruto and Izuku barely able to stand from exhaustion. Naruto's hands and part of his arms were bruised and had shallow cuts in them that slowly started healing on their own. "That hurt you, asshole!" yelled Naruto with clear anger in his voice. "And Naruto? Moments earlier. Weird. You've been saying that a lot since we entered the forest, Naruto-kun," joked Sakura. Naruto chuckled at Sakura's comment and started exploring the area they were now in. "I can feel here." "What do you mean?" "I can still feel the energy from the trees, but..." Naruto turned to look at her. "There's no animals here, no nothing, it's like a zone free of interference." Part of the reason Naruto had such a hard time using his sensing abilities in the forest was the vast amount of animals and insects interfering with his sensing. While not every being had a big chakra signature, there were a lot of them, and that made it harder for Naruto to focus. If he had more training, it would probably not be a problem for Naruto. Kakashi had explained to him that the best way of training his senses was exposing himself to situations like this and focus on each individual signature and separate it from the others time and time again. That way he would get used to bigger amounts of signatures, amplify his range over time, and get through what Naruto described as interference. He had, however, neglected training his sensing abilities the most in favor of working on his Fuinjutsu. He still trained, but definitely not enough to feel through the forest clearly. That's why this clearing irked him. For some reason the animals had left completely. Naruto could see the signs of battle, and by the looks of it, it must have been a big one. Whatever it was that happened here must have scared the local fauna away. I'll try and find a team from here. Naruto got to his knees and placed his index and middle finger on the ground. He closed his eyes and started concentrating on as much as he could. Near him he found what he thought to be a team from Suna. He was just about to tell Sakura when he felt them. A few kilometers from where they were, he could feel Team 10 and Team 9 fighting another team together. That immediately struck him as weird until he noticed Niji's chakra was all wrong. There was something going on with him, and whatever it was, it felt evil. Then Naruto noticed what worried him the most. He couldn't feel Lee. He could feel Tenten with lower than normal reserves, but he couldn't feel his friend at all. Lee always had a small signature because of his condition, but it was there, no different to that of a regular civilian. Full of worry, Naruto didn't even think twice. Team 9 is hurt. He released all of his weights and told Sakura to catch up to him as fast as she could, and he started running. He ran and ran as fast as he could for kilometers without stopping. He has always been a stamina freak, and that's the only thing that allowed him to run as much as he just did. When he got to them, the first thing he saw was Zuko shooting his overpowered gust of wind at them. Present time. What the hell happened here, Shikamaru? Naruto couldn't see Niji or Lee anywhere, and the only thing he found was an unconscious Tenten being taken care of by Ino. We don't know. When we got here they were beating Tenten in the ground. I don't know where Niji and Lee are, answered Shikamaru, currently the only calm member of Team 10. Naruto closed his eyes to focus for a moment and calm down. He turned to look at the cave where he felt Niji and Lee to be at. He was glad he could feel Lee this up close. A giant weight was lifted off his shoulders. Where's Sakura? asked Ino. She's coming. I ran here as fast as I could. She's catching up, should get here in a few minutes. As predicted by Naruto, Sakura arrived a few minutes after. She bonked Naruto on the head for ditching her and then walked towards Ino and Tenten and started helping the Yamanaka with her treatment. Naruto and Shikamaru were both going to enter the cave where the boys were resting to assess the situation when they felt it. An energy so powerful and so vile even the non-sensors could feel. Just waking up, Tenten caught a glimpse of Niji walking out of the cave, a series of black markings extending through his body. Shikamaru subconsciously went to grab a kunai, with Naruto doing the same with one of his twin staffs. Niji paid no mind to them and turned to look at his fallen teammate, only to find her beaten to a pulp and barely conscious. Who did that to you? Even though his voice seemed calm and stoic as usual, everyone could feel the hatred in it. Zuko, who was just coming back to himself, stood up and faced Niji with a smug look on his face, his exhaustion clouding his judgment. I did. Why? Are you angry? As he asked the question, Zuko pointed one of his arms at Niji and started channeling chakra to it. Not dignifying a response, Niji started to walk slowly towards him until he disappeared in a show of pure speed. He re-emerged just beside Zuko and without a second thought he started attacking the Tenketsu in his arms, but he didn't stop there. Once all the chakra pathways in his arms were closed, he started attacking all his blood vessels and nerves. The arm fell limp to the side and started swelling at the same time it turned purple. Not caring about it, Niji continued his assault on it. the sight of blood starting to drip from the constant onslaught of precise strikes did very little to satiate his bloodlust. Niji's body was covered in blood while Zuko fell to the ground screaming in pure agony, holding his arm and trashing around the ground, hoping it would somehow lessen the pain. Had Niji not been interrupted, he would have kept until his arm exploded. What is wrong with Y-Hakukusho? Niji placed a palm on Naruto's unsuspecting chest to stop his advance and sent him flying at full intensity until he crashed loudly into the wall of the cave, making him wince in pain. Kage main no jutsu. Holding a rat seal, Shikamaru's shadow connected with Niji, freezing him in place. He immediately started struggling as the potent chakra surrounding Niji overpowered his own. Niji was set free and started running at Shikamaru, only to be stopped by strong rock-covered punch courtesy of Sakura. Niji was sent crashing hard into the ground by the sheer force of Sakura's attack, but seemed unaffected by it as he stood up once again. "Stand down, Niji!" yelled Tenten, standing up and leaning into Ino for support. "They're holding you back." Niji turned to look at his teammate with a face full of hatred and started walking toward her with no care for the other people present. Sakura and Koji wished to intervene, but Tenten didn't allow it. "They want you to be weak." Niji kept walking, even more enraged as the whispers filled his ears and clouded his senses. "They think you a slave, they're just like them." He stood in front of her and looked ready to attack. Chakras started to be molded in his hands, and despite Sakura's insistence to let her help, Tenten wouldn't have it. Kill them all." Niji raised his hand toward his teammate, set on stopping her heart with a single movement, but much to everyone's surprise, including Niji's, the bloodied and bruised Tenten managed to conjure enough force to squirm off of Ino's hold and slap him in the face, hard. "Stand down this time." Tenten's voice came out as a full-on command, and for some reason, it seemed to work. Niji was brought out of his trance, pearl-white eyes staring into brown ones. The marks taking over Niji started to recede and went back to hide into his neck. With the sudden burst of evil chakra gone, Niji dropped to his knees. "Troublesome. We give up," said a recently awakened Dosa carrying Kin on his shoulder. "Here, take our scroll, we're leaving." He then picked up his now unconscious teammate and rushed the hell out of that clearing. Naruto picked himself up from the ground and watched the whole thing play out as he made his way back to the group. Seeing Niji in the ground and no trace of the weird markings, he sighed and stood next to his teammate while looking at the Hyuga in the ground. "That was rude," he said, crossing his arms. "Tenten, what happened to you?" asked Sakura. Tenten sighed and sat down again. She then started retelling the events she and her team had gone through up until the sound team first made their way to her, including their fight with Orochimaru and what he did to Niji, much to the Hyuga's annoyance. He hated the fact that he was bested by an opponent. He hated the fact that he found the power he had been gifted alluring even more. "Orochimaru?" started Naruto, looking intently at Niji. "I only know he went rogue years ago. Jiji doesn't like to talk about him." Naruto made his way to Niji and much to his annoyance helped the Hyuga up. "May I look at it? Please?" he said with a playful tone. Naruto understood the gravity of the situation, but he wasn't going to pass on a chance to mock Niji anytime soon. Niji allowed him to look at the seal either way. He knew Naruto was learning Fuinjutsu because he wouldn't stop talking about it when he trained along with his team. It wouldn't hurt to let him check. Naruto was studying the design and couldn't understand much about the way the seal was constructed, so he started asking questions. "How exactly did it feel when you used it?" "I felt it pulling at me, like it was taking over my chakra when I used the Byakugan," he answered without losing the stoicism that was characteristic of him. "That is interesting." Naruto put a finger over it and started focusing on his sensing ability to see if he could learn anything useful about it. He could feel the vile chakra extending through Niji's own, like it was trying to taint it. "It's way above my pay grade." He sighed and removed his finger from it and allowed some space to breathe. It seems to be connected to your Byakugan somehow and it's extending through your body. The best I can do for you is seal your chakra flow to stop it from going through your body until someone who knows what they're doing takes a look. That made Niji angry. That is unacceptable, I still need to pass this test. His voice was daring Naruto to say otherwise, and knowing he wouldn't be able to convince him, he started looking for alternatives and spotted the scroll the sound team had left on the ground. What scroll do you have? He asked. Tenten was the one to reply. Heaven. Smiling to himself, Naruto went and picked the Heaven scroll Dosu left behind and put it in his pouch. Give our extra to them, he instructed Sakura. Catching up to what Naruto wanted to do, Sakura did as instructed and handed Niji the Earth Scroll. Now you have the scrolls you need, let's go to the tower and have someone look at you. Naruto was really hoping Kakashi would know what to do about it. He grew a lot in his Fuinjutsu knowledge, but this was on a whole other league. He had to give it to Orochimaru. When it comes to seals, he seemed to be one sophisticated bastard. I don't need your help. Calm down, Niji. Out of the cave came out Lee, breathing hard and still bruised. Bushy brows. Naruto rushed at his friend and started looking frantically over him. Besides Shikamaru and Koji, Lee had become one of Naruto's dearest friends, and the immense fear he felt when he couldn't detect his chakra signature wasn't something he would be forgetting any time soon. What did he do to you? I can barely feel your presence. The concern in his voice was evident. I'm not sure, Naruto-kun. The memories of his fight were very scarce and his head hurt too much to concentrate on anything at the moment. He closed the gates, pressing his fingers on his stomach. Explained Tenten, immediately catching Naruto's attention. The boy knew about the Hachiman formation thanks to Lee and Guy, and he was sure just hitting someone hard in the stomach wasn't enough to close the gates. With Lee's consent, Naruto lifted off his ripped jumpsuit to reveal his stomach, and sure enough, a 5-element seal was there. Lee couldn't channel chakra, but that didn't mean his chakra wasn't there. Orochimaru probably used the seal to force shut what little chakra he had available, and the gates closed. That's nasty. It was, in Naruto's opinion, well within his area of expertise. While the seal was a few levels above Naruto's own, it was one of the seals he found in the scroll left by his mother. He had made it a point to learn as many of them as he could, and the counters for some of the more advanced ones. That way he would be able to help when needed, even if he couldn't replicate the seal itself. He had been right. This is going to hurt a little. Naruto closed his eyes to focus the right amount of chakra in his hand. He formed a claw with his fingers, and each of them started shining a light blue in the tips. Gajokane. Naruto slammed his hand into Lee's seal hard and knocked the wind out of him. The green-clad genin stood up almost immediately, however, and thanked Naruto for his youthful assistance. Are you done, Chika? Naruto asked to his lazy friend. Shikamaru, who at this point only wanted to drop to the ground and stare at the clouds, looked tiredly at his friend and nodded. We were on our way to the tower when we found them. We should all go together then, said Sakura, voicing Naruto's thoughts. Tenten needs to be looked at by a medic. Traveling in a big group will prevent other teams from attacking us. Everyone agreed, almost, and they decided to let Team 9 rest a little before making their way to the tower. Sakura patched some of Tenten's injuries with the supplies she was carrying on her and let her sleep for a while. The damage caused by the relentless kicking Kin had given her while Tenten was trapped under her genjutsu really made a number on her. Naruto walked to Niji and asked him to remove his shirt. He unsealed a brush and some ink from a scroll on his pouch and started drawing a seal on his neck to stop the flow of his chakra. The seal was by no means perfect or what Naruto would call fancy. But it served its purpose, and while it was not hard to break, he was putting it on a willing subject. He went through a short sequence of hand seals, making the seal light up. After Niji tried to use his Byakugan and failed, Naruto was satisfied, and the three gathered teams made their way to the tower. If qualities of heaven are your desire, acquire wisdom and knowledge to bring your mind higher. If qualities of earth are what you lack, train your body in fields and prepare to attack. I don't know what that means, exclaimed Lee, looking happier than necessary. What a youthful riddle, let us fan our flames of youth to understand its meaning. Stop yelling. Shikamaru's left eye was twitching, he had been hearing Lee's youthful proclamations for a whole day now. Troublesome idiot. Why don't you relax a little, Shika? Suggested Koji with a little apprehension. It had taken them all a little over a day to get to the tower. Because of Team 9's dire situation, they all had decided to take it easy, and walk all the way here as opposed to running. Had they done that, they probably would have made it in a few hours, saving Shikamaru from the constant speeches of youth and the banter between the members of Team 9 and Naruto. Shikamaru liked Naruto, he really did. Shikamaru knew Naruto was right most of the time in his discussions with Neji. He just couldn't understand why he would keep on arguing when it was clear the Hyuga wasn't going to change his mind about his beliefs. This whole thing is such a drag. The Naruto sighed. We need to open both of our scrolls at the same time. Not wanting to waste any more time here than it was necessary, Shikamaru tossed both of his team's scrolls to the ground in the form of an X, revealing a sealing array Naruto recognized as a summoning contract. Hello, announced the Jounin in charge of Team 10, Sarutobi Asuma. I had no doubt you guys were going to make it, come with me now. Asuma stepped out of the smoke and started walking into the tower with his team behind, taking them to a set of rooms where they would be allowed to rest until this part of the exams came to an end. After exchanging nods with Shikamaru, Naruto grabbed the scroll he was carrying while Sakura did the same, and they tossed them in the ground, summoning their own sensei to the room. Kakashi-sensei, Orakai dash. We know, Sakura. Kakashi would have liked to congratulate his team, but there were more pressing matters at the moment. Use your scrolls to summon Guy, Neji, he ordered. Not wasting time, the Hyuga prodigy did as instructed and did as the other teams had done, making Guy appear in the room with a face so serious it seemed out of place. Guy, said Kakashi, getting the man's attention. Take your team to the infirmary, I'll take Neji to see the Hokage. As he said that, he made a Kage Bunshin that approached his team. My clone is going to take you to your room, I'll meet you there when this is sorted out. Sensei, called out Naruto. The seal is connected to his Byakugan somehow, I placed a suppression seal on him to stop the spreading of the invading chakra, make sure to remove it. Kakashi nodded at Naruto's explanation and motioned his clone to take them to their room. Naruto and Sakura followed the clone to a room and entered alongside him. After telling them the real Kakashi would come see them when he was done with the Hokage, he disappeared and left both Naruto and Sakura to their devices. They both collapsed in one of the beds. They considered themselves extremely lucky to have come out as safely as they had of the forest. Had they run into the same trouble Team 9 had, they didn't know if they would be able to make it. Naruto was also glad he could feel Gaara in the tower. That meant he wasn't somewhere else destroying any genin team. He felt wrong judging Gaara's character without really knowing him, but the feel of his chakras could only mean trouble. We should rest, Naruto, said Sakura. She knew very well what was going on through his mind and she had to agree with him. Naruto only nodded at her and laid down on a different bed, staring at the ceiling, hoping that Kakashi and the Sandaime would know what to do. I'm sure Naruto would have loved to be a part of this, said Kakashi as he carefully drew a complex array of kanji in Neji's body with his own blood under the supervision of the Hokage and Guy. I don't think this is the time for a Fuinjutsu lesson, Kakashi. Guy's tone was probably more aggressive than it should have been. No one would blame him though. Having your student in a situation as complex as this can put anyone on edge. Calm down, Guy. Kakashi is just making regular chit-chat. Surely you wouldn't fault a proud sensei for talking about his students. Though an innocent question from the Hokage, Guy was able to understand perfectly the meaning behind his words. I'm sorry Hokage-sama, Kakashi, it was most unyouthful of me. He said, earning a chuckle and a dismissive wave from the Hokage. Kakashi wasn't really paying attention to them anymore, too focused on the finishing touches of the array. There's too many people in there, it wouldn't be wise to make a move on Niji-kun now that sensei is there. Orochimaru was hidden in the shadows outside of the room where the sealing ritual was taking place. He didn't wish for Niji's gift to be sealed away, but he wasn't too worried about it. The seal Kakashi was preparing depended on the recipient's will. Someone with such repressed hatred as Niji surely can be manipulated with the right incentives. Oh well. I will allow you to think you're winning just this time, dear sensei. Even in his thoughts, the snake Sunin managed to chuckle in that mocking way only he's capable of. Orochimaru disguised himself as a Jounin sensei from Oto again and left swiftly without being detected. Or so he thought. I should feel insulted that he thinks I wouldn't be able to detect him out there. There's still much to learn for you, Orochimaru. Sarutobi would have loved to intercept the Sunin right then and there to put an end to what he started years ago. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. Such a fight in a place full of genin would prove to be disastrous. There was no doubt in Hiruzen's mind that Orochimaru had more than one contingency set in place if such an occasion arose. For the time being he would allow him to go. Hopefully that decision won't come to bite him in the ass later. Shaking his head out of his musings, the Hokage watched as Kakashi finished his work on the seals that were placed on the young prodigy, making sure the seals coincided with those in the book he was using to supervise the Jonin. As he went, the Hokage nodded to him, signaling it was okay for him to start. Nodding back, Kakashi addressed the young Hyuga. This is going to hurt a lot, Niji. Whatever happens, make sure to move as little as possible. Not waiting for a response and very convinced that he wasn't getting one, he started going through a complex set of hand seals and placing his hands on the curse mark. As he finished, Kakashi called out, Fujihoin. The kanjis drawn in blood started creeping up Niji's back slowly, converging all around the curse mark. The Hyuga boy let out a piercing scream that made his own sensei flinch, but, despite the pain he was going through, Niji's will was strong enough for him to remain completely still during the entire process. After the ritual was over, Niji lost consciousness and was then taken by Guy to the infirmary. There are still 2 days left for the next phase of the exams to begin, and if what the Hokage thinks will have to happen ends up happening, Niji might not be allowed to participate unless he wakes up in time. Hopefully no more teams will get to the tower in the meantime. He really didn't want to host preliminary rounds. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fan fictions like this, and goodbye.